So for those of you who don't know or have forgotten my name, I'm Jonathan Castillo. I'm the youth intern. I've been the one that's been with the 6th and 12th graders, kind of helping us through as we go through the book of Galatians, and really just helping out in whatever way that I can, especially by bothering Mary. That's my main job, is to make sure that Mary has a hard time.
I second that.
It really has been an amazing pleasure to be with all of you for the past, I believe it's 6 weeks now that I've been here. I leave the 16th, and it has been an explosive experience where I have gotten the opportunity to help in 2 food pantries. I've gotten the opportunity to serve in many Sundays and to really see how this church is so connected to each other. And I got the opportunity to go through the book of Galatians with this youth that are excited and hungry for God's word, and it is amazing to see. So the message that I'm going to be talking about is called the Fullness of Time. And it's talking over Galatians verses 1 through 7, and we're going to look at what Paul says about the fullness of time and how that affects everything that has been created. How when God sent Christ, we are not bound anymore. And he sent him in such a way to where you don't have to wait like oftentimes they did. So, without further ado, let's look into the verses. I actually made a last-second change from the actual thing. Also, the text is a little small. That's my fault. But I'll read it out for you. And if you don't, and if you would like to follow along, the verses are Galatians chapter 4, verses 1 through 7. What am I saying is that as long as the heir is a child, he is no different from a slave, although he owns the whole estate. He is subject to guardians and trustees until the time set by the Father. So also, when we were children, we were in slavery under the basic principles of the world. But when the time had fully come, or with the fullness of time, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive the full rights of sons, because you are sons. God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, the Spirit who calls out, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And since you are a son, God has made you also an heir. So let me give you a little bit of a background into Galatians. Paul had this illness at one point that may have made him a little disfigured or have made things harder for him to move or walk. And so he ends up at this church of Galatia. He had no intention of going there. He had no set plans to go there. But because of his illness, because of the situation that he was at hand, he had to go to Galatia. And he was surprised because it mentions in the chapter, or in the book, that the Galatians treated him with love and respect as if he were Christ himself, and that surprised him. And he was very happy about that. And so he preaches to them and he teaches them. And then fast forward a few years, or fast forward a little bit, and the church of Galatia is saying that you have to live the Jewish law, the Jewish customs, in order to be saved. In order to have a relationship with God. And this makes Paul so mad. He starts off the letter saying, you foolish Galatians, and he continually goes off and he's rattling off and he's getting angry, he's cursing them, and he's like, how could you? Anybody that preaches this, that you have to do works to be saved, is damned, is cursed, is condemned. And that sets up the rest of Christianity. Because now we don't have to work for our salvation. And we're going to go into that a little bit more. Paul says that if you live by the law, by the Jewish law, the Jewish customs, whether it be the way that you wash your hands, the way that you eat, the different things that you are allowed to eat, the way that you dress, circumcision, whatever it may be, if you are bound by those things, then you die by those things. Because you can't fulfill it. In a similar way, a lot of the times we have this expectation on how to be a Christian, how to be a good Christian. It's like, oh, well, in order to be a good Christian, you can't curse, you can't drink, you can't swear, you can't do all these different things. And we have this list that we rattle off and we refuse to do. And we say, no, because if I do any of these things, I'm not a good Christian and God won't have a relationship with me. That expectation bounds you. It binds you. And that's kind of what Paul's saying. He's saying that if you live by the law, if you live by these expectations, you are serving these expectations and not serving God. That's why he says you are a slave if you do this. You don't get inheritance. You don't have the land. You are a slave working for the land, and you don't have a relationship with God. And we couldn't save ourselves. If we could save ourselves, Paul says, then the law would have been enough. There's no reason to bring Jesus into the picture. Why bring in Jesus whenever you can save yourself? I forgot to bring all the clocks in, but if you've noticed by the clocks in the church, none of them are right. None of them. Not a single one. There are moments in food pantry or in Bible study with Percy, and I'm like, oh gosh. I'm like, man, Percy, I really love the book of Acts, but we're going a little bit long. What time is it? 3:15? I'm like, either we went way longer than I expected, or that clock is wrong. And either one of them is possible. So, the reason why I mention this is because I want, it's funny, Charlie looked at me during food pantry and said, see that clock? And I went, yes. And he said, it's almost as if we have the whole world time zones here. We got past, present, and future up here. In the past, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. In the past, you were bound by the law. You were bound by time. For the Israelites, whenever they messed up, whenever they couldn't fulfill the law, they were bound by the repercussions of the law. Whenever they messed up, they had to spend 40 years in the desert, bound in the past. 40 years in the desert before they can see the promised land. It didn't matter which way they went, it didn't matter which direction they went, they were bound by that repercussion from their mistakes. So a lot of you are wondering, well, why the law at all? Why have the law? This seems like a horrible thing. Like, why would God say, hey, in order for us to have a relationship, you have to fulfill this law. You're not going to be able to do it, but, it's there. Well, two big reasons. One, it puts a magnifying glass on ourselves. We know we can't fulfill the law. I don't know. How many of you are perfect? Mary got tempted to raise her hand. She did it. I knew it. I knew she was going to do it. Listen, I'm pretty close, but I'm not perfect. My beard's a little patchy in some areas, and that's the only thing that gets me. No, none of us are perfect. And the law reminded us of that. That we needed something bigger, something greater. And the law also kept us in line. Kept us thinking about God. Kept us following God. Doing our best to please God. And so after time and time and time again, we kept messing up, and then we started developing these expectations from Daniel, from the law saying that we would one day be saved, about this Messiah. This king that would come down and rule the whole world and would take kingdom over kingdom, and the whole world would bow knee by knee for him. And we started developing these expectations. We're like, this guy's coming. The Jews were like, our Savior's coming. Our King of the Jews is coming. Just you wait. Just you wait. And then I want to reread chapter 4, verse 4. But when the time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might to redeem those under the law, that we might receive the full rights of sons. God sent his Son, himself, incarnation, born of woman, meaning that he was man, just like you and me, bound by the law, meaning that he had to accomplish the law just like we were expected to. The only difference is that he did it. And he died so that we didn't have to. And that's exciting to me. What's the most exciting for me is when he says, when the time had fully come, in the fullness of time. In Spanish, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm a little Hispanic. In Spanish, the translation is directly to deadline. When the deadline that God had set had come, he sent his son. And that's so exciting to me. I get really excited over the Bible. It's so interesting to see how much passion God places on his creation. He starts building up Jesus from Daniel, and he says, there's this guy that's going to come. And in this verse, Paul says, when God's appointed time had come, when he said, this is the right time, that's when he sent his son. He didn't just toss the dice and say, let's go gambling today. Let's see when Jesus comes in. No, he set a specific time for all of us. This perfect time was the Pax Romana. It was peace during the Roman Empire. There was a common language. Everybody knew how to understand and talk to each other. So conversation was easy, especially whenever you're talking about a guy that's here to save the world. The Jewish people were spread out. So people knew who the Jewish people were. They weren't just some small group in the hole of the wall. They were known. And people knew what they were expecting because all of Daniel had been completed so far. And they kept saying, he's coming. There's urban civilizations and there was better means of traveling to those civilizations. It was a perfect time for Christ to come in. It sets up Paul. It sets up us. And that's how much God cared about his plan for salvation. He didn't want his people to be bound anymore. He didn't want his Israelites to have to be slaves as they have been for time and time again. First to Egypt, then to the law, all these different ways. It's the perfect time. And God planned it. So, when Christ died, we're no longer slaves, right? If that's the case, why oftentimes do we still feel slaves to the law? Paul says in the beginning of this, what I'm saying is that as long as the heir is a child, he is no different from a slave, although he owns the whole estate. That's chapter 4, verse 1. Meaning, a lot of us may feel like children. But we're heirs. We're heirs to the kingdom. We are heirs to what God has promised us. We are part of God's promise. But yet we feel as a child. We feel as though we are slaves by our expectations, by our sin, by time. And we say, if we just spend more time, if we just wait, if we just expect this change to happen, God to come in, then it will happen. But the thing is that oftentimes I think back to the painting that Michelangelo does, where God is reaching out with his whole being, and Adam is tired and struggles to get his finger up. And oftentimes we are like that. We say, if God just reaches out a little bit further, if God just reaches out a little bit more, once God comes in, then I will be the heir that I'm supposed to be. But the thing is, time has already been fulfilled. Jesus already came. The law doesn't exist. The law is dead because, like Paul says, if you live by the law, you die by the law, and God didn't want that anymore. God wanted you to live by the law only to remind you that you need him. And the reason why we still follow the law is to show him grace, or to show him appreciation and respect and honor, and to give glory to his name. That's why we do what God says. Not for our own salvation. And trust me, the reason why I keep mentioning this is because for a lot of my life, I felt like as if works equal being a good Christian. The more you serve, the better Christian you are. The more food pantries you were involved with, the better Christian you are. The more that you give, the better Christian you are. And I realized way later on, way too late, that that's not the case. I was trying to earn my own salvation. So let me give you a timeline. At the age of 13, I started preaching. I'm 20 now. Barrett made me preach the first time. So it's kind of like full circle here. Yeah. He made me preach in our youth group. It was supposed to be a 5-minute sermon. And I went on for 13 minutes. I was nervous. I went up and I was shaking and I was like, still going through puberty. And I was like, God said! God said! But yet, My age was not seen as wait a little bit longer, he'll be wiser and more capable of preaching. It was seen as the time is now and you have the capability and the ability to do what you need to do now. And now, 7 years later, I'm preaching again. I preached a majority of my life from 13 and on. I was constantly a guest speaker at our youth group. I was in children's ministry for 6 years, and then I went to college. I go to Harvard University. I hate saying that. I always feel like I'm bragging, like I'm up here like, hey, you know me, I go to Harvard. No, but the thing is that at Harvard, it's tough, as you'd expect, but it tore me up. I kept saying yes to doing events, yes to serving, yes to doing shows. And I kept thinking, the more involved I am, the more I serve, the more that I do these things, the better person I am. And I got tired. And I realized I started changing a lot from the way that I grew up. And I had no intention, originally, of being in San Francisco. To give you an idea of how I came here, my original intention was I was going to work in Texas, I was going to make good money, and I was going to direct a show. And then Barrett texted me, man, hiring a youth pastor is hard. And I went, need a summer intern? Jokingly. And he said, can you lead worship and sing for us? And, so I'm going to do that today.
No.
I'm going to use this guitar. This is not plugged in, trust me. You're not gonna. So, here we go. I can't sing. Just so you know. I can't play guitar. Just so you know. I'm not actually going to do it because that's not my purview. I just want to do it for the joke. But the thing is that I had no intention of being here. My skill set of what Barry originally demanded was not for what y'all needed. And then he said, no, let's actually talk about this. You can be the youth director, 7 weeks, come in, you learn, you take advantage of our library, and you do everything that you need to do. And I was very excited, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. It's different. It's not what I expected. And similar to Paul, I had no intention of being here. Not saying that I am Paul, I'm pretty close though. And what happened was a big radical change. Whenever I came in, I wasn't questioning my faith, but I was questioning whether or not I was a good Christian. I grew up in a church that often related your works to whether or not you were a good Christian. If you drank, you were a sinner. And if you ever took a sip of alcohol, you weren't saved. If you messed up, you better repent soon because you're not living a Christian life. And it messed me up. Nothing against that church. I love that church, and I will continually serve it. But it messed me up because I got here, and I on the phone with Barrett, I told him, listen, I don't think I'm qualified. Same way that I'm not qualified to play guitar. But I said, I don't feel qualified. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste the church's time. I don't feel like as if I'm able to be there. The reason why is because I was judging myself. This is a long tangent just to get back. I was judging myself by the expectations that I had bound myself as, not as an heir of God. And what I came here to realize as I read through Galatians in a series that was 7 weeks, the exact same as the amount of time that I was here, it all worked out perfectly, that I didn't need to be bound by my works. I didn't need to be bound by what I did or what I didn't do. It wasn't a contract. It wasn't something that I had to fulfill. It was something that Jesus already fulfilled. The law has been completed. Why was I bounding myself? And it hit me. it hit me hard. Every Wednesday that I was sitting with Elijah and Devin and Evan and Kaylin and Chloe and Matthew, I was learning just as much as they were. And it really, really hit me. That's my big thing. Christ has already completed the law. You don't need to. Christ has already completed the expectation that God has set for you. You don't need to. Christ has already served. Christ has already done the miracles. Christ has already completed everything that a good Christian should do. You don't need to. I'm not saying go out and sin. What I am saying is that in everything that you do it because you love God. Do it because you love your church. Do it because you love Christ, because of what He's done for you. And it's amazing. As we were worshiping, I kept thinking about all these different things that I've gone through to get to this point, to get to Harvard, and I was like, I cannot give thanks to God enough. And then that last song came up. What can I say? That's what I want to encourage you to do. Everything you do, give thanks to God. No matter what it may be. Don't bound yourself up by time. Don't bound yourself up by what you expect to do. Don't bound yourself up by the law or by sin or whatever it may be, whatever your vice is. You're free. And you're free to give glory to God and to love Him and to say, God, my time is now. I'm going to take advantage of it. Here's the thing that bothers me the most about my timeline, about how I fell and I wasn't confident in my faith and I wasn't doing good and I didn't feel great, is that I did nothing about it. I waited. And God had to reach out to me and show me, you could have changed this. And that's okay. I'm here. That's what I want you to know. It doesn't matter whether you're 20 like me, 90, 50, 45, 3. It doesn't matter. What matters is that Christ already fulfilled everything that you need to do. So why not look for it? Let's bow our heads and pray and give glory to God. God, I thank you for this wonderful opportunity that we get to learn about your name, to learn about your glory, to learn about who you are and what you've done for us, God. Please give us the opportunity to give glory to you and to worship your name, to honor your name, to bless you, God, because you are a God that deserves it all. I thank you for this church. I thank you for this opportunity of fellowship and worship. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.